So I don't have a Reckless Ben update. There's nothing new on his Patreon, and I already played for you like the last video he had, but there is a husband and wife law tubers, and they have an interview with Chrystal Gorman. She was the original store owner that did the consignment deal, and then there was a hostile takeover.
And they're claiming that she stole the Legos.
Yeah. Well, there's some merit to that, which she'll explain, because she had, like, from going to trade shows, she had one set. And whenever she realized she had it, she was like, hey, I have this set, and gave it back to the owner.
That's a mistake, though. That's not.
Well, she was just trying to be honest. She seems honest, but she's also, in the last, like, Reckless Ben video we saw, he was like, maybe she stole Legos. I don't know. And she's like, I was kind of like upset that he said that, but he also said, she seems pretty believable. She's like, so I kind of don't blame him from where he's coming from. Like, she's really,
he is reckless. So
she wasn't like super defensive. So anyway, I want you to watch it because I think it gives her a lot of like credibility.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Okay.
And I'm right sometimes.
Let's see it.
Let me know when it's up.
It's up.
Them if he was with you the whole time.
Teleportation.
You're not going to shame me into silence. That's not just within the franchise agreement. That's state law in both Oregon, Utah, and federal law. So no matter what way they try to phrase it, the way they went about the termination itself violated everything.
They were doing things that were violations of the franchise agreement
from day one.
Yeah.
The world wants to know, is the bird safe?
I don't know.
We don't know what happened. What's up, everybody? Mark Breyer, a real-life trial lawyer here at the Husband and Wife Law Team. Today, we are getting into the Salem Bridge trial again by Action App about you guys.
Oh, yes. And it is surreal.
Yeah. I'm more online now than I have ever been before. It is
very strange.
There's so much new content to consume. And when people are talking about you, it becomes this almost obsessive need to know exactly what they are saying. And I've also got, the supporters online that are sending me, hey, have you seen this yet? Yeah. And so I try to not only try to watch everything that's coming out, but I try to stay engaged with everybody that's been so supportive.
Somebody did a behavioral analysis video of interview.
That was weird.
Try refusing to watch that. That was
Chris and Ben, call me. I'd love to hang out.
Yeah, we couldn't stay away from that. Yeah. As she was starting it, she was going, this is going to give me a whole bunch of new insecurities.
What are the one or two things?
They actually seem kind of cool. Like, they're kind of goth.
They seem cool to me.
Yeah, I'd hang out with them.
Yeah, I'm down.
These are the so-called facts that are not facts.
There are two things that I continue to see repeated no matter how many times I try to correct the record. And that is, we do have a signed consignment agreement with Brian, a legally binding consignment agreement between Brian Mansell and the Salem Stores LLC as represented by me. And so the notion that it was a private contract between myself as a person and Brian as a person, or that there is no contract out there. Brian has a copy of it. I have a copy of it. Our attorney has a copy of it. I believe the Kaiser Police Department has a copy of it as part of all of that. Corporate has never once reached out to me to ask for it, but the contract exists.
And yet corporate has made a whole bunch of comments with innuendo and suggestion.
Corporate is using a rough draft of the consignment agreement that they pulled from the Salem email account that Brian had sent before we signed it. So that's not the signed version. I had sent back notes about things that needed to be changed. So they're operating under a first draft and then acting like that is the final draft.
And one of those substantive changes was in his original draft, he wrote, oh yeah, and you sign it here as, Chris Gorman.
Me pointing out that it should be the LLC.
No, this needs to be the LLC. Yeah. I don't know that BAM knows that. They
should. They're in the comments and they're watching all of these videos. By now they should know.
Did they ever call you before? Because there was over a year. There was over a year where Brian was trying to get this handled, right? Before it hit people like me. And before the world knew. Did corporate ever call you and say, hey, this dude is alleging that Bricks and Minifigs, they never even asked.
Not to this date.
Yeah, they never have contacted.
Not us, not our attorney.
And so they didn't want to remind us, hey, you've got a really, really strong case against us. They just wanted us to disappear.
The common phrase that's used throughout most states and in many situations is knew or should have known. In other words, This would presumably be the first phone call, email, or letter from them to you saying, this dude, Brian, has made this allegation. We don't see that in the system. Is it true or false? It is blatantly true, inarguably, that there is a written agreement that was made for the entire consignment agreement.
Yeah. And they were informed. That's the other thing.
They were informed that
knew.
night.
And I think they're afraid of adding more evidence that they knew by contacting us, but they were informed, and we had
They also knew about the consignment agreement when it began.
even before that. So they have no grounds to say they were unaware.
You said there were a couple of factual things. That's it. What was the other?
The second is also related to that consignment, is this idea that I've seen repeated online that we were behind in payments to Brian, or that we weren't making payments to him. We were not behind in payments. His next payment was due November 15th. They took the store from us November 14th and said Brandon was taking on all of the consignment liability. It was no longer my responsibility to make that payment to him.
Brandon will take, taking on the business, he takes on all that kind of stuff.
Previously that night, I was talking to Kai on the phone and Brandon in person about what was owed to him, how to find what was owed to him, how to identify everything that belonged to him.
He has not been paid his percentage yet. And if I don't have the tickets, I won't know how much I need to pay.
We were not behind in payments. That payment was due the next day. And that was corporate that night with their termination agreement within the franchise agreement itself took on full legal liability of that. When you seize a business, when you seize an LLC, you cannot take responsibility for the assets of that business without also taking legal responsibility for any of the liabilities due.
Because if you could do that, by the way, for the people out there, you guys know this, for the people out there going, why can't you do that? Otherwise, every business would operate that way forever. I'll set up a business, I'll have someone else run it, and then I'll take just the money owed to me, but nothing I owe, and I would be more profitable, and every store would do that every year. So there's a reason why they can't do that type of behavior in most settings, and definitely not here. We see you on the phone. You have in front of you, Brandon.
I like her hair.
Somebody is on the phone and you're having the conversation, and you say in that conversation, there is money here that hasn't been paid yet on consignment. And the reason is not because we're behind in payments, but because we pay on the 15th of every month, and they swooped in and took the store on the 14th. So what I was telling them was, we have made some sales and you need to make sure this gets paid because it's not due until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And people have misconstrued that as not only that, but corporate has made statements that I wasn't paying him. And so people have put those between those two together, that I was late on payments or behind on payments or not making payments to him. And that is false.
Another thing I think that complicates it is the way that the payments were structured was they were kind of in a 3-month rolling system. So you were getting paid for something, what you were owed 3 months back. And that was because when we started taking it on, there was, this is a pretty normal structure, for example, in the publishing industry, where you're dealing with like returns, right? So it looks like, wait, why is it that after all this time we paid this much? Yeah. Well, that's because there's a 3-month roll.
So there's a 3-month window, essentially, because of the small amount of sales between the first comic convention, for gift card payments, for royalty payments, for any returns, and anything that was purchased using trade credit. And so there was that 3-month window. We were not behind. We were right on schedule. I would have made that payment to him the next day.
I have 2 major things I want to go over with you. Let me start with the one that might be bothering you guys the most, or maybe you're like, thank goodness you're asking, I want to refute it. Reckless Ben recently in an interview saying,
there's an equal chance that the previous owner stole some and the new owner stole some.
And then combined with that was that at some point you guys located some of the Lego that belonged to Brian and his father. And then you said, look, we found it. We're going to make sure you get it. You went through everything you could go through, but the combination of finding that Lego, which some people might go, well, that's great. Shows how honest they were. However, for the people who hear what Reckless Ben said, and listen, I've been pretty vocal. I never knew who Reckless Ben was before all this stuff. And I give him credit for using his platform to try to help people, because we need more people who are willing to do that. So I don't know the guy. I don't know his motives, but I can say here, I'm very glad that he outed someone, but you guys fall under the umbrella of the potential someone. So when you hear people say that, your reaction is what?
I'm going to answer this one because Ben's natural inclination is always going to be defend me, and I'm gonna save you from that. I'll be honest. When somebody sent me, I was at work. Somebody sent me that video and said, "Go to this mark. How dare he?" Basically, and my first response from that was not pleased.
I was furious.
I was not pleased. I have now since come around. I can understand why he said it. I may wish he hadn't, but there's a lot of things that that I wish people weren't saying. But I can understand essentially on twofold of that. And I think you'll understand one part of this much more than the average viewer. Reckless Ben has always been clear from the very beginning that he is doing everything that he's doing for Brian Mansell. We have been clear about that. He's been clear about that. We know that. But also, like, as a journalist, he has to maintain that that sense of neutrality. The things that we can prove that everybody hasn't already seen yet, that's going to come out, whether it's in mediation, discovery, in court, in front of a jury. However, anything that hasn't come out, like, he's operating under what he has, what most everybody else has seen. So I can understand him not wanting to say very clearly, while wishing he hadn't phrased it that way. I can understand why he would want to maintain that sense of, journalistic neutrality. As a human, not like, I wasn't super happy about it, but as a journalist, I get that. The other side of that is corporate, like BAM is attempting to make this civil RICO case and claiming that we are colluding. There are even perhaps some claims that we are paying Reckless Ben to make corporate look bad.
Or he's paying us. It's not clear.
Or he's paying us.
This is so ridiculous.
These people seem pretty all right. They seem
I
competent
find them extremely believable.
Or Brian's paying us, or we're paying both of them. Corporate has even tried to claim that our attorney is somehow in on the collusion, that it's all a grand scheme of I mean, I'm sure you saw the TRO and the RICO filing. We were all over the filing itself, but not actually as named defendant.
You want to know one of the reasons, and I can't speak to their motivation, but one of the reasons people make allegations like that is to try to get your lawyer off the case. They try to turn a lawyer into an interested party or interested witness, and therefore try to suggest ethically, and then they will sometimes, in situations like that, file motions with the judge and say, Judge, their lawyer needs to be removed, which of course would be at huge expense to you, because all of a sudden now you have to pay another lawyer to get up to speed if you can even find that other lawyer. I can't speak to why they did what they did, because it was definitely what we call shotgun litigation. In other words, it was not a rifle shot, right? It was everyone's doing everything, we're clean, in a verified complaint that later was admitted to be not fully accurate. But that's neither here nor there. Well, depending which complaint we're talking about.
My only wish in that was, I wish he had said, something to the effect of, I'm sure that's possible, but there's no evidence for that. And there's lots of evidence on this side,
He did follow up by saying, but she's been very transparent.
Yes.
And she's always been open to try and solving this. And then Bricks and Minifigs just calls the cops on me every time I try to solve it with them.
When you left the store that day, what percentage-ish, and I'm not asking for 27.6 or 82.3, but how much of the collection that Brian had given you was still in your possession and had not yet been sold?
I'm glad you're asking, because this is important for folks to know.
I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me.
It's minuscule though. It was what was in, because it was what was in the garage that was from the convention. And as soon as we found that, we returned.
That was the other part of the question that you had asked previously.
The recovered Lego, because what happens with this, and I'm going to ask you it this way, and I'm going to ask you it like I'm their lawyer. Ready?
Yeah.
For a long time, this process was going on, and you pointed the finger and said, I gave corporate a spreadsheet. Corporate came in, it's on video, and then fast forward, and it's like, oops, we actually have it's in our garage. How can you explain the statements you made before and reconcile that with the fact that all of a sudden you're giving these new Lego, to Brian?
Chris, have you seen their pup?
What? Yeah, I see their pup. I see it in the background. Yeah.
It keeps walking around back.
I see it moving around back there.
It's a nice looking dog.
Yeah, it is nice looking.
Oops, our fault. For someone who doesn't believe you, that looks like you're not telling the truth.
Right. Especially, and I understand if it was, if it was a third of the collection was in our garage or something, that would be a nightmare. We're talking.
Oh yeah, but let's not use subjective numbers. So yes, corporate had access to that spreadsheet on the store's Google Doc.
Which, by the way, you had created. Did you know they were coming in that day?
No. So that spreadsheet, I created a copy of the one that I was working on. Was it September? I think the date on it was September, because Brian and I had spoken, because we were coming to the end of the consignment agreement. He wanted a good sense of where we were at, what was sold. So I created a copy to email to him. So when corporate says multiple sets of books, it was literally a duplicate of a spreadsheet. The sets that were returned to Brian, we would take his sets to comic conventions. We had two companies that were doing comic conventions together, our Not a Pipe Publishing and Bricks and Minifigs. And so we would get booths together. So we would separate out what convention stuff was for the store and what convention stuff was for the publishing company.
Now let me break that down really quick. You guys separately own the publishing company.
Yeah. We both owned both businesses. So we both own. So I am 49% owner of Not a Pipe Publishing. He is 51. And then for Bricks and Minifigs, I was 51%. He was 49%.
When you guys would go to a Comic-Con or whatever it was, you would bring product. Some of that product belonged to your own set, the publishing company. Yeah. Some of that product belonged to Bricks and Minifigs, also your company, meaning the franchisee portion of it. Yeah. And so you would have to keep track of which was which.
Yeah.
And then,
it's books and it's Lego. So that wasn't,
pretty easy.
So we just get an extra large booth. And so half of the booth would be the publishing company. The other one would be the Bricks and Minifigs. The whole reason this entire thing started with corporate coming in and seizing the store is we had planned to move to Europe. In hindsight, we probably, because financial constraints, we ended up coming back, but we moved forward with the plan thinking that corporate would abide by the franchise agreement, give us the inventory, make things right. And so we moved forward. And it was as we were going through and packing up the house to figure out what to donate, what to sell, what was getting thrown away, all of that stuff, we finally got into the very back corner of the garage where all of that convention stuff was stored in totes. And so as we're going through all of that stuff, then I found the tote that had some leftover sets from the Bricks and Minifigs portion of the convention. And then I reached out to Brian. And then there was, because he was already dealing with corporate and dealing with the Kaiser police, it was coordinating when's the best time to meet up. And so we had 13 sets that were on that inventory spreadsheet. So anything outside of those 13 sets that M&R purchased were never on that inventory. There were 13. I have the numbers. Brian and I sat down and actually signed a witnessed thing with the list of sets, the list of minifigures. And then there was a tote of 300 and, I have it written down back there. I believe 347 minifigures that were duplicates of ones we already had in the case. So they were never actually added to the inventory because I just hadn't gotten around to, because they were duplicates. If we had sold out, I would have added them to inventory and priced them, but I'd never just gotten around to inventorying.
And to be fair, you didn't know that corporate was going to come in that day and say, we have your store at this minute.
Yeah. Brian also knew all of those minifigures had not been inventoried yet. It's really easy for other people to sit back and go, but you had them for a year. How didn't you get around to them? They were duplicates. We didn't need them yet. It wasn't a focus. If we had needed them, I would have done them. Brian knew we had the thing that wasn't. It's easy to sit back from, hindsight and say, I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently.
Well, and to go back to one of your previous questions, this is one of the things that still rankles me, and it relates to this. The termination agreement that they, offered to us and that they wanted us to sign. And also in our conversation with Kai, the representative of corporate, the night of,
who was on the phone in that video, right?
Yeah.
They kept saying, we will provide you with a complete inventory. And had they done that, all these questions would have been resolved because we would have been able to say, well, here's our spreadsheet. Here's your complete inventory. Okay, these things all match. This lines up. You are, compensating us correctly.
The way it's supposed to work in our franchise agreement, I mean, there's two factor. We should have had a 30-day notice before any termination took place.
And how much notice did you get?
None. No, none. Brandon
Yeah.
showed up at 5:30 and notified me at 6 the moment I locked the door and turned.
So, just so I understand, a big discrepancy in the inventory that she had was that the duplicates she hadn't inventoried yet.
Yeah.
Well, you probably should have done that.
Well, that's what she's saying, though. She didn't need to. She didn't know the store was going to get taken. It was one of those I'll deal with that when I have to things where they still had figures to sell.
Hold on.
And these were duplicates.
Hold on. I don't get me wrong. I really like them and I find them very believable. Have you ever worked in retail?
No.
Okay. So you inventory everything when you receive it and you inventory it out when you sell it, even if you have duplicates, everything.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Okay. So her saying they were duplicates, we didn't inventory them yet, doesn't translate to me when it comes to running a retail business at all.
Some people are not that complete at things.
Okay.
They do things when they need to do them.
No, I feel bad. I don't want to criticize them, but that's like a glaring mistake,
Yeah, and I think she mentioned earlier in the video, she said it's easy to in hindsight to look and say, oh, I should have done this. So that's probably one of those things that she's like, I should have inventoried that stuff when it came in, but I didn't because I didn't have time or didn't have the energy for it at that time,
Turned off the sign that he was there to take the keys and I was being terminated. It took them from 5:30 until about 7:45 to actually send the termination agreement. That's it.
So any tidying up that you would do to make it more seamless was not possible.
No. Yeah. So
I mean, not realistic anyway.
There are people that will point to the fact that there is a section in the franchise agreement that calls for immediate termination. And they're using it as, see, we have the right to immediately terminate. But that language is not saying what they think it's saying. So the difference between termination and immediate termination is if they're terminating the franchise agreement, like a traditional termination, they have to allow you a 30-day right to cure, a right to fix any defaults. If you're behind on
and let me help explain that to people. The deal between a franchisee and franchisor, while each agreement is different, doesn't allow the franchisor to just steal the property of a franchisee. Otherwise, you could buy a McDonald's, make it the busiest McDonald's in your state, and McDonald's corporate come in and go, oh, that's really busy. You're closed today, it's ours. They can't do that if they think you're selling the wrong, you're not using sesame seeds on your Big Mac bun. They have to give you the opportunity. Not be afraid to use sesame seed on your Big Mac bun. You should be shot and you should lose immediately. But for normal things, you can't just steal from a franchisee. If they think you're not living up to the standards, you have the opportunity to fix it, short of, as an example, you're conducting illegal activity and selling narcotics.
And that's the other part of it, right? So a traditional termination, you have that 30-day right to cure. Okay, you're behind on payments, you're whatever, you're this, right? You have 30 days to fix those faults, and then we continue operating. The other part of that is you get arrested for a felony, right? You're dealing heroin out of your store. You're, doing something fraudulent, or you're, whatever, something that harms the brand. The other part that falls under the immediate termination does not mean the same day. You're still legally required to give a 30-day notice. That's not just within the franchise agreement. That's state law in both Oregon, Utah, and federal law. All require between 30 and 60 days notice for the termination of a franchise agreement. So no matter what way they try to phrase it, the way they went about the termination itself violated everything. And that led to a domino of, had they given me 30 days notice, I could have informed Brian, returned everything, made sure that we had done all the payments. We would have gone through and done a full inventory. Corporate then could have come in and done their own inventory. And then we would have a right to dispute that and bring in a third-party inventory. And then if we still disputed the third-party inventory, the way the franchise agreement was written was that everything freezes until we come to an agreement amount. Instead, what they did is they came in at the end of a business day, said, we are taking the store, changing the keys, locking you out at 7 o'clock at night. And then at 10 o'clock the next morning, Brandon was there. The store was open for business. Customers were coming in and they were selling product.
I imagine Brian had your number. You had Brian's number because you had been selling his father's product for how long had you been selling his product before this happened?
So they
were selling product before they did their own inventory?
I don't think that's what they're saying.
Okay. They said they were doing it by the next morning.
Well, yeah. She's saying that Bricks and Minifigs kicked them out of the store and opened up the next day and started selling stuff.
Right. So when did they do an inventory?
They haven't done an inventory.
Oh my God.
Right? Like, isn't that the whole crux of this? The people keep asking for an inventory and they keep basically saying that they don't have to give one or they don't have to do anything.
I feel like there are no guidelines in this franchise.
This is what this woman is saying. She's saying that there's
she was set up. If that's the case, she was set up to fail at this business.
Correct. That's what I believe she's saying.
September for Rose City of 2023. And then we signed the consignment agreement, I believe around December or so. So, we had it for just over a year.
And here's why that matters. Because everyone's like, who can be trusted? Who can be trusted? But what's missing from that is for about a year, there was an ongoing relationship between you and Brian. In any point in that process, did Brian send you an email or say anything to you suggesting that he did not trust you?
No. Within the consignment agreement, he had the right to end the agreement at any time.
Let's go back to the missing Lego, okay? And this is what I want to ask you about. It has been alleged all across the internet and implied or expressly stated by corporate that you, the two of you, stole all the Star Wars that were on consignment. So here is my question. Let me pose it to you. Let me play lawyer for you. I've been doing a little cross-examine-ish. You did not know that they were going to show up that day. When they showed up, Brandon showed up. Half hour later, you closed the store. He took the keys. He was with you that whole half hour. A couple hours later, you left the store.
Yes.
You no longer had the keys to the store.
Yeah.
How could you have stolen all the Legos if you didn't know he was coming and never would have had a chance to steal them if he was with you the whole time?
Teleportation. It would have required alien technology.
There's a way. Yeah, there is a way. It was the cartfuls of stuff that I was taking out to the car under my jacket.
Yes.
But Ammon says they sent Brandon in there in preparation for a hostile takeover so that I wouldn't take everything out of the store or declare bankruptcy, all of which I was legally right, would have been within my legal rights. But then also claims that I took several cartfuls of stuff out to my car under my jacket.
She took at least one, if not more than one, cartfuls of things out to her car with her coat draped over it.
Which is really interesting that if you send somebody expecting a hostile takeover and they're watching somebody allegedly do that, they're not taking pictures or videos of them doing that.
Yeah. Was the inventory back in the storage room or out where the public could buy it?
It was out where the part of it that could fit on the shelf was out where the public could buy it between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, when I locked the doors and turned off the sign, Brandon watched me take it off of the shelf, put it in a cart, and roll it back to the storage room and put it in the safe.
So they knew for a fact where it was.
Yeah. And then Brandon was back there in that room with me as I was taking pictures and videos of the section of the collection and the other store Lego in that storage room.
Did you take pictures of the entire store before you left it?
I took pictures of everything that I could get to in time. There was a small section in the very back of the storage room behind the last case that I couldn't get to. And then there's some more parts like behind the counter where I couldn't, things might have been behind other stuff. But we took pictures and video of absolutely everything we could get to.
Yeah,
I didn't get any pictures or video.
Confusion because CoffeeZilla did this absolute deep dive into our photo evidence, which was yeoman's work on his part, his team. But because we couldn't see some things, they weren't included in our
And there's some sets that you can't see because my angle was wrong and you couldn't see the number. You could only identify the box. I didn't get any pictures that night of my office. Because we had no Lego sets in there. It was just operating equipment, the printer and stuff like that. The cash safe, different safe from Brian's collection, but where we, kept the cash and store keys and all of that. I didn't get any pictures of the birthday party room. I focused on everything that had inventory.
What are you going through? Let's get into your mindset, right? Most people have never been through anything where there's like this, wait, I woke up this morning, I had a business. We knew we might go to Europe. There might be a wind down. We're trying to have conversations and wait, the store just closed and I'm out of business. Can you try to get us into that mindset so that people can understand, why didn't you move the shelves? Why didn't you get every picture? Why didn't you give them the inventory list? Try to bring us to that point so people can understand, because most people have never experienced that.
Yeah, I think the central question is, why didn't we call the police? You should address that.
Yeah. I would have given them the inventory list had they ever asked for it. Big question of that is, why didn't we call the police? And I'm going to say this as kindly as I possibly can. I would have been okay doing that. That was my first instinct. Yes, corporate maintained control of the lease. They never transferred it over to us when they were supposed to. So they had the legal right to kick us out of the store. Ben had a little more faith than I did that corporate was going to act ethically and follow their own agreement. He wanted to keep things civil and not escalate things that evening. I had already, in my operations of the store, had relationships with some Kaiser police officers with the various break-ins. I should have. I honestly, one of the biggest things that I would have changed is I would have called the police before I even called you to come to the store, because I was there by myself that night. And I had to call Ben and say, I need you to get here right now. They are kicking me out. Right before I did that, I should have called the Kaiser Police Department myself and made them come. Part of what I hesitated doing that was, what happens if they get there and Kai is on the phone saying, we are the leaseholders, we want her trespassed. And the Kaiser, instead of saying this is a civil matter, say, okay, you have to leave immediately. All those photos that I took, all those videos that I took, they don't exist. We are in a vastly worse position. That was part of my thinking behind that, of let's keep it civil, get as much documentation as we can. And then they told us you have to leave the minute you receive that termination letter in your email.
You only had it on assignment. You did not own it. And yet every night before we'll call it the takeover, you chose to protect Brian's stuff by putting it in a safe.
Yeah.
Right.
Corporate didn't do that. You did that for about a year.
Yeah.
So the same person who every day put the stuff in a safe in case of a break-in, which had happened, it could happen. The same person who went to that level to protect the Lego sets and all the Lego that were there is the person that corporate's pointing the finger at as the one who stole it. When you put it in the safe that night, was Brandon there? Did he see you do that?
Yeah.
And did
he was asking me about it.
Oh, he was asking you what it was.
Yeah.
And you shared with him. There was.
Yeah. Here's the stickers that identify it.
So you showed him the different color stickers. He saw you put it. Did you close the safe?
I did not. So I left the safe open. I left 3 safes. So that's also the common thing. There were 3 in that room, and I left them open. And as we are walking out the door, you can hear me tell Brandon, I've given you the keys to the mailbox, the keys to the store, the code to the safe in the office that stored the cash, and I left the keys to the safes in the storage room back in the lock of the safe for him. I gave you the mailbox in the silver, and then the keys for the back storeroom and the safe are in the safe. So any notion that he couldn't have seen or somehow been able to access them is disproven by me telling him on camera, you have all of that.
Well, I'm going to word this question carefully. I'm not asking you for a statement of fact. I'm asking you for a statement of opinion. My question is, what happened to this entire now missing collection of Star Wars sets and Star Wars Lego that Brian put on consignment?
Well, we can tell you two things we do know for a fact, and people can then make suppositions. The next morning.
That's actually a great question. I mean, I would be pretty freaked out.
Yeah, I don't know how I would react to that.
Or maybe she was like, finally, we can go to Europe.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they were rattled by it. And I can understand why they'd be rattled. Because like she explained, they already know when this is going on that Bricks and Minifigs isn't handling this the proper way. So like she said, she wasn't sure if she should call the police or what she should do. So I imagine she was probably rattled.
Yeah.
At 10 o'clock in the morning, that business was up and running and selling items. So people can.
How do you know that?
They were.
How do you know that, Ben?
He had to go back the next morning, not even go into the store, to pay the employees handwritten checks. And so the store was up and running with employees in it the next morning. We are aware of that. And second, we know that if you went to the Salem Bricks and Minifigs website and you said, I want to purchase a set, it would redirect to the Eugene sales store. So people can draw what conclusion they want from that.
Let me ask you about the U-Haul. All right. The U-Haul gets a lot of discussion. You guys were there that night. When did the U-Haul show up? Was it there that night? What happened with the U-Haul? What did you observe? You were there. Clear up the U-Haul and everything you do or do not know about it.
So I had a meeting with corporate that morning at 10 a.m. and they said, we have somebody who may be interested in purchasing the location. He's going to swing by tonight after closing and just take a look around. That was my introduction. I had never met Brandon before. I didn't know what he looked like.
You had already voiced to them that you guys might be leaving the country.
Yeah, that was our meeting with Kai, Ammon, and Matt to discuss whether we could even move forward with selling the store. Because at that point, we didn't know if they were going to allow us out of our franchise agreement early.
And you preferred to sell the store.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if someone takes it over, it's a different liability situation for you than if it just goes out of business.
If they had said, no, we're not going to let you out of your franchise agreement early, we would not have moved. That was like, if they had said no, but they led me to believe that they were amenable to possibly selling it to this person that was coming to look at it.
Just to clarify for people who don't know what this looks like, you're a franchisee. There's a lot of disincentive to closing up shop and leaving, like bankruptcy disincentive, like things that financially are really bad for you guys. So you go to them and you say, hey, can we do this? Now, it is not at all uncommon if there's a successful franchisee that a franchisor might go, oh, no. Hold on. Let's work together. We're going to find somebody for you.
Yeah.
Because we don't want this store that has brand recognition in the community shutting down. So it's good for you. It's good for us. We'll work out the numbers and the details later. You get a call at 10 a.m. going, we may have someone, and you guys are thinking we want to move. So this could be a great day.
Yeah. So I was working by myself that day. Brandon shows up at about 5:30.
So really, this is all your husband's fault. Sorry, I'm married and I had to make the joke. I had to do it.
He never worked at the store.
I never worked. I was a
he had a full-time job.
Public school teacher.
Yeah.
So.
And so it just happened to be because it was a Thursday. Yeah, I was working by myself because my staff would have worked on the weekends. So he shows up at about 5:30 and comes in and doesn't really say much. He just kind of introduces himself. And so we make kind of like small talk for that last half an hour before the store closes. And then I lock the door. I turn off the open sign. I'm taking Brian's stuff back to the safe. Actually, I'd started doing that a few minutes before we closed, but that was pretty normal just because I didn't want to be there all night. And it wasn't until like we had locked the door and shut off the open sign that he says, well, okay, and well, now give me your keys. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, what now? And then he says, yeah, I'm here to take over the store. Corporate's terminating your agreement. Okay, I've heard nothing about this. I need to figure out what is going on. Do you mind if I step outside? Was Brandon
surprised that you had heard nothing about it? Was he like, I thought you already knew?
I couldn't read anything from him at all. He was just no affect whatsoever. Nothing. Just he barely engaged. So I stepped outside to make a phone call to Kai.
Because you're not handing the keys to a stranger because he says so.
Not only that, but I'm not handing over the keys with no inventory done. And then Kai says, well, yeah, this is happening. And I'm talking to him about like, what about the consignment? What about the inventory? I'm not leaving without taking Brian's stuff with me. And then him saying, if that contract is between you and Brian, that's fine. Show it to us and you can take those with you. If that contract is between the store and Brian, it remains in the store. Anything that belongs to the store, you are not allowed to take.
And taking on the business, he takes on all that consignment.
How much stuff was on consignment, Chris?
I mean, we said I don't even know how
No,
many.
what I mean is, was it only Brian's stuff, or did
only
you have?
Brian's.
So nothing
only
else in the store was on consignment.
Nothing else was on consignment, just Brian's. Yeah.
Understood.
So I call Ben and I say, like, you need to get here immediately and go back in and start doing like a handwritten inventory. And it didn't take long to realize there was no way I was going to be able to. They're like, as soon as you get that termination agreement, you have to leave. Shortly after he had gotten there, I'd looked up and realized and noticed that he'd been driving a U-Haul, and I thought that was odd. Just coming from Eugene, driving a U-Haul seems exorbitantly expensive based on mileage. And I was under the impression, I don't know if corporate gave me this impression or I just presumed when they said they have somebody from Eugene, I presumed it was somebody that lived in Eugene. And so the idea of somebody living in Eugene, that's like an hour and a half drive, renting a U-Haul to make an hour and a half drive didn't make sense to me. So that's why I noticed it.
But what's the purpose? Like what is the purpose of renting a U-Haul or a box truck unless you need the store? Now, of course, we don't know what he was doing that day. He could have been moving an apartment, but he brought to the store a box truck.
Well, it's interesting that there have been so many conflicting answers to why he had that U-Haul, because that night he was on the phone talking to somebody while I was in the store going around taking pictures. And there was a point in that conversation where he said, well, yeah, I'm driving a U-Haul because I'm going to pick up a truck later. And me thinking is he picking up, like in the back of my mind, I'm going, did he buy like a wrecked truck or something? That seems odd. I was just thinking it was really weird for somebody that lives an hour and a half away to rent a U-Haul to drive up here. At the time, I wasn't thinking in the context of this man is here to steal my inventory.
I'm glad she took all the pictures she took.
Yeah. Sounds like she reacted pretty quickly.
She quickly and did the most intelligent thing she could do under the circumstances. Yeah.
Wasn't until later, and then when you pair that with corporate denials of there ever being a U-Haul, and then this long rambling story about, well, no, it was a different storage unit
and it was a different day, but
and it
clearly was not a different day.
Right.
Like, it's very strange.
Yeah,
I know how bad it was that day from your viewpoint. I get that, but let's go from before that. How did you end up buying this franchise? How much interaction did you have with corporate? And during the course of time, is this a shocking event because this is not how they behaved, or in hindsight, you should have seen it coming because this is exactly the kind of people they were to you the whole time?
I am shocked. Well, not that shocked.
Both?
It's both.
It's both.
You sound like a lawyer. You can't say both.
Well, okay.
No, that's well explained. This
So,
is interesting.
I mean, I was managing the store, essentially doing everything an owner is already doing. And so it felt like I'm already doing all of the work. I'm already working the long hours. It's a dream opportunity to do it myself. But then in hindsight, knowing the circumstances behind how they fired the manager that they brought on that I then replaced and how they dealt with her firing, and then the discrepancies and the confusion around how the previous franchise owner of that location left the business, those all look like much bigger red flags than at the time they did. So it's both, right? I always had good interactions with them, even when it was something that they weren't doing, like when the bank account got frozen or the lease didn't get transferred or dealing with the social media stuff, like any of those issues. They were always very quick to say, yeah, no, we messed up. We'll take care of it. We promise this won't come back to you. We're willing to work with you. We're willing to help you out. But then the behavior doesn't change, right? We messed up on the lease. We'll take care of that. Then take care of it. So it's really both. We had a good working relationship, and all the little hiccups, looking back in hindsight, are much larger.
And I think this is an important thing to put a pin in. This is really, they were doing things that were violations of the franchise agreement
from day one.
Yeah. And we didn't say to ourselves, wow,
this is a giant red flag.
Making a contract on day one. This is terrible. We need to get away from this, because the way they would present it was, oh yeah, terribly sorry, we haven't turned over the passwords to the social media, or sorry, we haven't turned over the bank account. Don't worry, we'll get that taken care of. Sorry that our failure to turn over the lease is causing this extra charge. Don't worry, we'll take care of that. And so we're going, okay, well, this isn't worth losing our business over when they're being kind, right? And so for them to then turn around and use that as a pretext to take the business, to say, oh, well, the reason we're allowed to do that is because there was a late charge on the, on rent that we caused. I mean, it turns out in hindsight, it was a huge red flag that we did not see as a red flag.
I was too emotionally invested in the store already, as all the work I'd put in as a manager, that I was so excited for the notion to have a thing to call my own that I overlooked so many things. And I think had I not approached it from that perspective of, I've already built a base here, I've already developed these relationships, I'm very excited to move into the ownership aspect of it, then I think like a lot of those things I would have picked up on had I not. But then you're also dealing with a, upstanding, Mormon, family-based business people that you're not expecting that while you're letting all these little things slide and focusing on the day-to-day of running the business, they're creating a ledger of these things that they can build up and then use against you.
I think, a heads up for folks in the future, when you are dealing with something like this, rather than getting into a situation like ours, where we were having to go out the next morning and find an attorney, get an attorney. Like, get an attorney.
That's what the California store did right when they did this.
Everybody had representation.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure they had representation advising them through this process. Whereas we were saying, if you do this to us, we're going to go get an attorney tomorrow morning.
With all this happen, right? This is a franchise without naming names. And if the answer is no, the answer is no. Have you heard from other franchisees or former franchisees to go, either we're surprised this happened to you, or that's exactly my experience with them, I hope you hold them accountable?
Yes.
Without naming names, has it been multiple and you start going, oh, it isn't just me?
Yes.
And it's validating, right?
Very much so.
Oh, yeah.
3 quick questions for you. Number 1, I'm sorry to bring in my own personal experience as a lawyer, but I'm going to do it. A lot of times, everyone.
This whole business sounds like really amateurish, not on their part, like
No.
the whole company.
Right, but I that's a lot of businesses are like that. I think.
Yeah, this is like a national franchise.
Right, but I mean, I don't know.
Everyone has lived their life. And it is not at all uncommon that in a case where everyone agrees that someone I'm representing is not responsible, that the defense will do anything they can to rake my client through the mud. Why? Because it's effective. Because instead of people sitting there as jurors and going, wait, you ran this person over, you admit you ran the person over, why are you bringing up something that happened years ago? They do it because it works. So how did you feel when the CEO comes out and says, she got in trouble at 19 years old. Don't trust what she says, or the fact that we trusted her background, her experience.
She apparently has a retail theft and other criminal arrests on her record.
Was that I don't care, that's silly, or was that infuriating? And how do you feel about it?
I mean, it's infuriating. Now I'm no longer surprised at any kind of mudslinging. Now I'm no longer surprised at hearing what is being spoken about me. Now I feel like there's no bottom, right? There's no bar. So I'm kind of trying not to let that surprise me. At the time, CoffeeZilla saying that was like, I was shocked.
They're like, she has a history of some type of burglary, theft.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
There's only one reason why you turn to mudslinging. It's still to this day. I just it's still infuriating.
It was hurtful.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. But then there's the other side of that is we live in a culture in which we have been raised to assign shame to things like poverty, things like houselessness, things like drug addiction, mental illness, criminal records. Like, there's a reason why Oregon passed the ban the box law. In Oregon, you can no longer ask an employee if they've ever been convicted of a crime outside of very specific circumstances. So not only were they trying to sling mud and get at my character and my trustworthiness, but then there's this, see, she must be morally bad. And I still believe, and my first reaction that night with CoffeeZilla was, you're not going to shame me into silence. There's nothing in my past that I am ashamed of. There's nothing in my past that I haven't learned from, that I haven't grown from, that doesn't have a place in the person that I am now. You can't bring up anything that's going to shut me up. It's going to do the opposite. At this point, I'm genuinely expecting, oh, we found an ex-boyfriend. At this point, I would not.
And he says, Chris is a liar.
I would not be surprised if it devolved into this. And I'm like, listen, I'll tell you right now, the string of red flags in my past should have told me immediately that if it seems like too good of a deal, it's too good of a deal. You're
selling a certain shirt on your website that my team got a huge kick out of. Tell us about the shirt.
Yeah, tell everybody why you're angry about this shirt.
Listen, I design 99.9% of the items on our store as the executive merchandising director of Not a Pipe Publishing. Most of those designs are mine. Ben designed the Schrodinger's U-Haul shirt. It is now our best-selling design. And that makes me mad.
Yeah.
In all honesty, it makes me thrilled that people got a kick out of it and are buying it. I love that.
All right, I have one last question. The world wants to know, is the bird safe?
I don't know. We do not know.
We don't know what happened.
We don't know. So I watched a couple of days after they took the store. There was one security camera that remained pointing at the dumpsters. And I watched a couple of days later, Josh load Tattle's cage in the back of his truck with a bunch of garbage. I could not get a clear view whether the Tattle was still in there or not. I called animal control with a concern because it's a born in captivity domesticated bird with his wings clipped in the middle of November in Oregon, outside in the elements if he's in the cage. And I never heard anything back from that. We never got any word from corporate saying we've changed our mind. You can now come take the bird. We've never from anything until that video that came out where they said he took it to a shelter. We're still trying to get information from corporate to provide, because in Oregon, you cannot surrender any animal at any shelter without paying a fee, signing a contract, and like giving your information. So that's part of the thing that we're having our attorney ask for them as we go into this discovery is
what shelter?
Where did Tattle come from? Like, was Tattle your bird before, or was the shop's bird? Like, what's the story?
Well, it's one of the first things that I did after we bought the store, because this is going to be in my dreams, when I went, if I had the dream job, what would it be? Mine was always a cozy little bookstore, coffee shop that had a shop pet. And that was always my, like, if I ever won the lottery and I got my dream job, right? Lego store wasn't quite the same, but it was also one of these silly things of like, I always imagined if I owned my own business, it would have its own little mascot, right? And so I kind of like, I went to the...
They stole her bird?
That's what it sounds like.
What do you think they did with it? You think they just set it free?
Maybe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they don't sound like very nice people.
No.
Pet store, and there were 2 parakeets, and I was like, okay, this seems perfect. And so we had Tattle and Tail that a staff member named based off of I think like an anime or something. I don't actually know how they came up with that name. Pretty sure it was an anime. Originally, Tattle had a partner who ended up getting sick and did not survive any treatments from that. And so at some point, once we made sure that Tattle wasn't also going to be sick, because this was just a couple months before, which the pet store and the vet said was fairly normal when you have birds that were born in captivity and moved to different locations. So we were just kind of like making sure that Tattle was going to be okay. And then I would have brought in another friend for him. But part of that conversation last night with both Brandon and Kai was, who does the bird belong to? And me making the mistake, and this is hindsight, making the mistake of like, I purchased the bird, like I purchased Tattle in the cage and all the supplies with the store card and on the store's pet account.
And also, and people have been very critical of, why didn't you take the bird? And we understand, we're pet owners, we love our dogs, our cats, like but
I made what I thought was the best decision. Again, you never think that you're leaving somebody in charge of the store that's going to act
the way they act.
Regardless, and if people want to criticize, they can criticize. However, I'd ask the following question and all those people. If they didn't want the bird, why would they take it to a shelter instead of calling you guys up to see if you or a former worker or anyone else would want the bird, that the bird knows and they know the bird, like to just take it to a shelter?
Said,
that's the thing.
We
knew
know
the employees had, good, loved the bird and would take
knew how to take care.
Knew how to take care.
It was a shared
we were
employee task.
Leaving the store's bird with the employees who loved that bird and would take good care of it.
Well, and
if they didn't want their employees to be caring for that bird in their store, they could have called us.
The incoming individual said, "Hey, don't forget your bird." And she says, "Your problem now."
I'm gonna step in here because I accept criticism, right? You can't grow as a person without accepting criticism. Ben's natural inclination is always to defend me. Yeah. And as a partner, as his wife, I appreciate it. But when you're all over the internet, sometimes there's this pull between, I want to defend myself, but also I don't want to feel like I'm like there's a lack of accountability. And there's a big part of all of this. I'm gonna cry.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a big part of this that feels like it speaks to so much more that is happening in our world today, where if people were taking accountability for what they did. I don't begrudge anybody. I'm not upset at anybody who has any kind of criticism about how I left the store, about how I handled Brian's consignment, about what happened with Tattle. I made what I thought at every step was the right choice, was the best choice, from not calling the police that night, from leaving Tattle in the store. There's these choices that I made. People are like, you could have put them in a box and taken them in your car. You could have held them in your hand. You could have, like, any number of things that you could have done.
You could have taken more pictures, and you could have done countless other things. They, on the other hand, could have given you more than minutes to decide, to prepare, to avoid all of these situations. So I'm not saying you acted perfectly. You acted under time pressure with no warning. They acted, if what you think happened can be verified, they acted with total foresight and planning to reduce your ability. So that doesn't mean you didn't make a bunch of mistakes. It doesn't mean you can't be open to those mistakes you made, but you do have to give yourself the room to say, I made mistakes, but the situation I was in may have contributed to those. For instance, had I had a month I wouldn't have still had the stuff if I would have, everything would have been documented.
Had I had a month, Brian would have been like, everything would have been returned to
None
Brian.
of this happens.
None of this would have happened if the next day corporate had reached out to us and said, hey, the new owners don't want the bird. Would you like to come and pick up Tattle?
On my way.
I would have said, absolutely. Do you want me to pay for him because he's a store bird? If they had said, we've got this guy named Brian coming in and we have some questions about this. How can you help us? For a year and a half, we heard nothing. We reached out through our attorney in December of 2024 saying, hey, we're exercising our right to mediation. We want to have a meeting with you. This is a month later. And corporate's response was, well, yeah, you have this right. But if you do this, we're going to sue you for $200,000. And then our lawyer saying, oh, yeah, you need to find a different lawyer in Utah.
If we go the legal route, it's going to be a very expensive battle for you. And it's not going to be a good position for you guys to get into.
Every step of the way, the person that could, I sound defensive again, but every step of the way, the people that could have prevented everything actively did everything they could.
Well, it looks like a pattern. I don't know what the worst part of this whole process has been, but it's probably been talking to me. So I just want to thank you guys, honestly, for giving us this much time.
And if people want to research dirt on me, they really should read all my books, right? I mean, that's where you'll find the dirt, I think. So read all my book.
In fact, if you read deeply into them, the secret code of what happened is found by buying all the books you've written.
Yes, yes.
That's
this
really,
page and that page.
That's really our grand master plan. We planned all of this out.
Yes.
All of this out.
As a book marketing campaign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you guys again. Good luck with everything. I hope justice is done all the way around when all is said and done. And good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
They seem really nice.
Yeah, they seem really nice and very believable.
Yes.
I don't doubt them for a second. Do you want to play maybe a little palette cleanser? Do you have a video for me? Then we got one more.